Hey y'all!
I'm Shaq.
And I'm Majella.
And this is TalkAbout, where we talk about the taboo. Now today's topic, we're talking about the empty glass versus the full glass.
It's pretty much the analogy that everyone's capacity for love and giving in a relationship is in like a glass. So you fill that glass with your capacity. So some people may have a higher capacity to give and receive than other people. And so sometimes, for example, if one person is pouring from, let's say, a capacity of that's really full into someone else who maybe their glass is really empty, you pour into them and it feels like you're not pouring enough, because even though you've given all you have, but maybe their glass is just a little bigger. So that's kind of the gist of why we call it the empty versus full glass dilemma.
So to add on, we're also going to talk about the different stages of life both persons are in and the understandings of that and how they can deal with it when coming together in that relationship. Like a good example is, let's say, when my wife was in school while I was working.
Right.
This is where the empty glass versus full glass dilemma kind of comes into play, because you're at different aspects in life. So now when, let's say, I'm ready to give my love to Majella, that may kind of sound wrong. Not that type of love.
Okay.
Or am I just in my own head?
I think you're just in your own head.
Okay.
Yeah. I get what you mean. So it's like so you're in a different place mentally,
Yeah.
kind of emotionally, because of you kind of have a little more security, let's say, while you were working, versus like I was in school. Yes, I still had a sense of security, but at the same time I was kind of like in a place of still figuring out a lot of things.
Yes.
So in a way, those circumstances contribute to kind of how much capacity or how much you have to give, how much you feel ready to receive, that kind of stuff. That's what you're trying to say. Yeah, I think you were just in your own head. That was good.
I didn't want to make it sound like, wait, I'm giving you love like in a sexual type of manner. That's what I said. Give you love.
I didn't even think of it that way. So I was so lost when you were like,
it was
not
just
in
me.
that way. So I was like,
it was just me.
Okay. See, not on the same page here.
So number 2, another part of it is the balance of the relationship, because a lot of times there may be an imbalance in it with, let's say, one person feels like they're doing too much and another person's not giving enough. Once again, part of that empty glass, full glass dilemma. Let's talk about one of the 5 love languages. Let's say words of affirmation. So you're expressing how you feel to your significant other, but then now in return, you're not really receiving that. So this is where you have to have those conversations and say like, hey, I feel like I'm not being loved enough, because when everything in life tries to come at you in different ways, sometimes you forget certain things and you have to start having like a checklist in your mind just to kind of find that balance in the relationship.
Right. And I guess to talk about the love languages as well, sometimes it's like people tend to give the love language that they maybe are used to or sometimes want to receive. One person may be giving in words of affirmation, but the other person maybe isn't as receptive to words of affirmation as a form of love. They might be a gift giver. So it's like one person's giving words, the other person's giving gifts, and then there's like a disconnect, because it's like, okay, none of us is feeling love, but the other person thinks that what they're giving is that love. And then it also has to do with, like, when you say balance, sometimes one person is in a position, sometimes one person may have to be in a position to give more, but sometimes, life happens, and let's say the most common example I can think of is after giving birth to children, or after having a kid, the partner who's given birth may not be in the mental space for a little while to like provide that love. So the other partner is feeling neglected because now everything's about the baby. and they are feeling, you know, kind of left out. Yeah, so I think that sometimes you have to have that conversation before, you know, the baby comes, to say, okay, it may feel this way because XYZ ABC. Are you prepared as the partner that has not given birth to be a little more intuitive, a little more in tune with what the other partner is needing? Because like, oh, our needs versus, like, I don't want to make it like, oh, I need whatever more, but in that moment, the person who's given birth is going to be in a more vulnerable position of kind of requiring a little bit more than the person who has not given birth. Sometimes it's going to feel like an imbalance, but if both partners are ready to kind of take that on, you can still make it work. Like, yeah. But it's being ready to accept that imbalance per se.
Yeah, there is a bit of an understanding when it comes to the person who's, let's say, going to that example, who's not given birth, because you have to realize that, like you said, one, they're vulnerable. The person who's given birth, they are in a vulnerable state. Once again, they just gave birth, so they're not going to give you that love that you want at that moment, and it may not be for a very long time. So that person has to definitely come to an understanding and say, like, hey, this can be frustrating for me, but there's a reason for it. It's not like she's doing it on purpose or so.
Yeah,
it's just part of the process of what you're dealing with at the moment as a unit.
And then I guess bringing it back to the cup thing.
Yeah.
That cup now, for the person who's given birth, it's being emptied by other resources. So, you know, child care and, you know, home care, etc. Maybe, or if the person who hasn't given birth is, you know, taking care of the home a lot more and making that, even if you're making that a lot easier for the other partner that's given birth, there's still those resources, the cup is still being emptied in other ways.
Yes.
So yes, they're still pouring into you. It's going to be a lot less pouring. And again, kind of like what we said at the beginning, it may not feel like enough, but to them, it's all that they have to give. And then that's kind of where people maybe have to pour into themselves or find other things that help to pour into their cup, like maybe like a hobby, or I don't know, like a spa day, I don't know, whatever makes you feel loved. Okay, so going back to earlier when we spoke about the different glass sizes, if there's like one person who has a larger glass and one person has a smaller glass, how that impacts their relationship and the love that they're giving each other. So we'll use each other for example. Let's say your glass is, I don't know measurements, so like let's say your glass is like 100 liters,
okay,
and mine is like 50 liters. Is that, those are measurements, right? Yeah, okay.
Those are very large measurements. Let's
These
go
are big
with
glasses,
that.
okay?
Let's go with that. Yeah. So let's say
you have a 100-liter glass and I have a 50-liter glass. And so let's say my glass is full, your glass is like halfway. Yours is at 50, mine is at 50. But 50 for you is halfway. 50 for me is capacity. So if I pour my 50 into you, you are full, but now I am empty.
Yeah.
So kind of, you know, if like that's kind of the dilemma that people end up in, finding ways to like balance and to maybe fill your own glass as well as filling the other person's. And I mean, it's supposed to be like back and forth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
Because then let's say in the opposite, you're 100 liters, you might pour, if you pour all of that, then there's overflow and it might be overwhelming. So I think just balancing in the way that you pour and kind of knowing how much that person wants to receive and how much you are able to give.
So then I have a question about that. What happens if, let's say, I do give you too much of that love, so I fill your cup all the way where it's overflowing? How do we communicate that and say, hey, this is maybe too much love? Like, how do we communicate that?
Just like that.
Just like that, huh?
Yeah, just like, I think, I don't know if we've ever had that, like, conversation with each other of like, I feel a little overwhelmed. Can we like sit down and discuss, hey, I guess we never had that conversation, but kind of like knowing the love language. Not never had that conversation.
I ain't gonna lie. If it got to the point where it's like, I'm giving you too much love, I'm like, nah, give her more love. It's like, nah, you gonna get this love.
That's too damn bad. You keep digging. Yeah, so I think because we kind of discussed like the love language stuff and all those things beforehand, we kind of mitigated that, so we were able to balance. But I think for us, it was more, maybe we were able to communicate when we're not feeling enough of it from each other.
Yeah.
So then, you know, you're able to say, okay, well, right now I am pouring, but I'm feeling a little stressed, or I'm feeling a little whatever. And so you sit down and you kind of discuss, okay, how do we help each other? You're feeling stressed, I'm feeling stressed. How do we mitigate that stress when we're at home and make sure that we're both still pouring into each other?
In conclusion, remember, the biggest thing to do in this empty cup versus full cup dilemma is to communicate. Communicate how you feel, express how you're feeling. That is how you're going to thrive in your relationship, especially when you want to have this balance.
Yeah. Both being communicating and being receptive too.
Being
right?
receptive, yes.
To constructive criticism. If both people are open to communicate and also open to receive the other person's thoughts, opinions, and things like that, then it balances out the cup, at least, you know, based on the analogy that we've given.
Kind of going back to the overflowing, it may seem weird if someone comes to tell you, hey, you're giving me too much love. But you got to think about it in a deeper level. It can show that, one, they're mature enough to come to you, but to also say, they're also telling you that, hey, I love that you're doing this, but the way my life is right now, I cannot give all that to you. In a way where it's like, I want to, but I know the love that I'm giving you is not going to satisfy you, or you may not feel satisfied. And then that's where the communication comes in. That's where, let's say, if you're telling me that, I got to be receptive to that. And I cannot badger you or say, oh, what's wrong? Yeah, like, do you not want me to do this? It's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So remember, communication is key. That was really corny. That was really corny. Anyways.
The key made it worse! I was trying to hold it together, and then you were like, that was really corny. And I was like, well, there goes that.
Peace.
Peace.